I think you can start here. I'm waiting for you.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alpha Artist interview series. Our goal is to bring art into your homes. I'm Renata Tome. I'm the co-founder of Alpha, a B2B crowdsourced, purpose-driven art platform. This initiative highlights some of the best artists that we have on the platform. And our goal is to show artists and collectors from our network how we could be collaborating. So the first speaker of today is Steve Lefkovits. Steve's photography interests have shifted towards discovering, appreciating, and sharing natural beauty. Creating images of nature shapes his spiritual understanding of life. Like ourselves, Steve strongly believes that art should be emotionally and intellectually accessible to all and not require an advanced degree to be appreciated. So Steve, welcome. And first,
Thank you
we'd
so much.
love to know how you're doing and where you're spending your quarantine days.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's really an honor, and it's kind of funny to hear you read my bio back. It kind of embarrasses me a little bit, but I guess it's true. I'm sorry. What was your first question? I missed it.
I just wanted to know how you're doing and where you're spending your quarantine days.
We're doing great. I live about a mile and a half from my gallery / office that you see in the background, and so I'm basically just living at home or walking down the street here to my space where I work alone anyway. So that part of it's not too different. And I'm here in San Francisco Bay, and we're surrounded by beauty and we're surrounded by nature, and so I don't have to travel to do my work necessarily. So I'm probably in a better position than most are right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Being surrounded by nature right now is a privilege. It's always a privilege, but no, mostly. With that said, can you describe a little bit of your art to us?
Yeah, sure. I guess my art maybe comes in two or maybe three different flavors, but fundamentally what I try to do is find some essence of something in nature, find its rhythm, find its vibration, and discover the beauty in that, the attractiveness, the thing that connects us to that, and then make an image in context that brings that home. And so it starts with appreciating something enough to want to spend time with it, whether it's a whale or whether it's a landscape. One of my favorite subjects is the night sky. I love staring at the stars at night because there's so much history, there's actual energy, it's mysterious, and it's something that almost no one ever sees. And so translating that into something that someone can appreciate, I think is a good example of what I do. But it can be also just photographing abstract landscapes, finding patterns, seeing geometry in space, and capturing that in a way that's accessible, or looking at the rhythms of animals. Some of my favorite subjects are whales and owls, and they're very different, but being able to maybe see the abstraction in what they do, to look at how they move through space and use their shape to create other geometry and their interactions with other animals is a lot of what I do. Does that make sense or no?
Very interesting. What led you into this practice? Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what made you go into this path?
Yeah, I took apart one of my dad's cameras when I was 13 years old, and it got me into photography. I learned how photography worked from the experience of having to put a camera back together in a hurry. And from that, I worked on the school newspaper in college, and I got a job as a photographer for USA Today, the newspaper, and it got me in the daily practice of taking pictures. And one of the things I discovered after 4 years of doing that was that I didn't love taking pictures of people. One of my colleagues came back from a trip from Alaska, and he laid all this film out on, all the slide film out on the light table. This is 1992. And he laid out all this film on the light table, and it was incredible pictures of nature. And I said, that's what I want to do. I don't want to photograph business people and entertainers. And I went off to graduate school. I got a degree in public policy, and I basically have taken one path professionally, where I now work in commercial real estate. But artistically, I spend my time making images of nature that you see on the screen. And so in a lot of ways, having a traditional business background gives me the time and energy and resources to pursue art. And so I spend, I don't know, maybe a third of my time in total working on making art in some fashion.
Artist. Yeah, that was one of my questions. If you're a full-time artist, or how do you divide your time? And I think if you could describe a little bit of your artistic practice, and how maybe that has changed now during this pandemic.
Yeah, it's definitely changed, because my process revolves around what's in front of us today, and how is nature going to move in a way that I can discover. And so a good example of this is, we live about 80 miles from Monterey Bay. And right now it's the beginning of the season when the gray whales migrate through the bay, which brings the killer whales in. And the cycle of activity is unique to the next 6 weeks. And so for the next 6 weeks, it's killer whale season in Monterey Bay. It's a unique opportunity to see movement. And so that's now. Other times of the year, there's different things going on. So I try to use the rhythm of the time of the year and where I am. And so obviously I try to put myself places where there are special rhythms going on. If it's the new moon, I'll go out to the desert to photograph the night sky. And so it's part of the process is daily assessment. Part of it's planning, and some of it is research, looking back to see what I've done before on this topic or in this area, to see what has not worked, to see what's missing. Sometimes I can go a whole season of photographing something and never get to the point. But looking at it 3 months later, I can go, oh, the thing that was missing was, my perception was off because I was uncomfortable on the boat, or I didn't wait long enough hiding in the grass. And so self-correction is a big piece of the process. And then execution, of course, going out and being in nature. And, a lot of what's unique about nature photography to me is that it's so heavy on logistics. And so many of the great nature photographers are great at travel logistics. And it's a necessary part of the art. You have to be there. There's no excuse. You can't fake it. You can't work from a photograph. And so just dealing with all that stuff, and probably only, 10% of the time, 15% of the time is actual on subject image making and immersion. The rest of it is getting there, waiting, evaluating. And so, it has a lot of elements of, boredom, frankly. And so, a lot of what we do is simply learning how to wait comfortably and without expectation. Honestly, if as a photographer I lived in expectation, I'd fail every day, because you can't. It would eat emotionally much too greatly at me.
Fantastic, Steve. I was just showing a little bit of your work in the background. Some
No,
people.
interesting to think how you as an artist react to your, yeah. Yeah, no, your work is absolutely fascinating. It's so stunning. But I think with what you're describing on how you react to the circumstances and how to adapt and working with nature where you can control so little, were there other inflection points in your career that helped shaping your work to what it is today?
Oh yeah. For many years early on, I actually wouldn't photograph animals. I just photographed landscapes, and I could be someplace. I actually once was in Yellowstone, and there was beautiful rolling hills, and the sun was setting, and there were bison in the frame, and I stood there impatiently waiting for the bison to leave so I could have my pristine landscape without animals. And it sounds silly today, but at the time it just wasn't what I felt. And so integrating animals came along around 2004, and it really opened up my eyes and my practice and what I was interested in. And then I'd say I've had probably in 2010, I had another big inflection point when I started staying out to photograph the night sky. It's different, not just because we don't usually see it if we live in the cities. It's different because it's scary. We are fundamentally equipped with fear of the dark. And I didn't really realize that until I was actually out by myself under the night sky. And, any little noise, a rabbit, a squirrel, a bird sounds like a bear. And it it definitely impacts.
Could never do that.
Yeah. It certainly impacted my
so
ego
brave.
the first time. Yeah.
Last night I was sleeping alone in my New York apartment, and I heard a noise, and I was like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get invaded." Yeah, we are programmed to be very scared of the dark. So to be in the middle of the savannah with a camera by yourself is insane.
Well, and that's I've learned that in that circumstance, I will give up with any excuse at all. It doesn't matter how far I've traveled. If I get scared and I'm not prepared, I go, oh, you know what? It's no good. I gotta go hide in the car. I gotta go back to bed. So preparation is really key. And probably a third of just to answer the question, a third inflection point for me was the first time I saw a solar eclipse. The solar eclipse.
We see something on your background, I think.
Yeah,
behind you.
Right behind me. The solar eclipse is like nothing else in terms of natural phenomenon. It has a huge emotional impact, and it's universally observable. But there's a mystery to it, and people who've seen eclipses come away changed by them, and they end up chasing them often for the rest of their lives. And the second eclipse I saw was in 2017, and I was with a group, and one of the people in the group in the middle of the eclipse just said, we just saw the soul of the universe. And I said, that is true. We are witnessing the soul of the universe right here, and it's unique. And in some ways, it really spoke to what it is I'm looking for in general. I feel like most of the time, I'm looking for an angle into viewing the soul of the universe, and we get to see little perspectives on it, and if we're very successful, we see something that gets to its core. But I think the eclipse is unique in that in the daytime we can have this experience of fundamental connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the three experiences that are just described now relate a lot to what we're feeling during this pandemic. It's making us way more humble and understanding that we're just a small fraction of a much larger plan, and that we are not more powerful than any other living creatures. We're all connected, and we're all part of the same. And I think I would love to finish our interview, although it's so interesting, could stay for much longer. But I wanted to get a few recommendations from you. So if you could please share with us maybe a book you're reading, or a TV series or a movie you've watched recently, which has inspired you, something that you are obsessed with eating a lot lately, and lastly, someone or something that keeps your spirit high. Yeah. Okay, we can start with a book.
Okay, the book is, I just read a book. It's my first graphic novel. It's called Dragon Hoops, and it's by an author named Gene Yang. He was a high school teacher who did a graphic novel about the basketball program at his high school here in Oakland, and it was a wonderful piece of art. I mean, the writing is fantastic, the imagery is incredible, but it's the storytelling, it's the combined storytelling that I learned from, and I did not expect it. I mean, he's a world-class artist. He went on from doing the book to drawing Superman for DC Comics, so he's in a class of his own. But it's very humbling to pick up what I thought was a comic book and realize, hey, this is the best book I've read in 2020.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
Yeah, TV series. There's on Netflix. There's a TV series. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, either a TV series or a movie.
Yeah. So on Netflix, there's a TV series. There's 3 seasons of a TV series called Tales of Light. And Tales of Light is about conservation photographers globally and the work they do. And I know a couple of these guys, especially interested.
Write this down.
Jeremy's nodding along.
Great series. And for food in these times, we've been
what is your comfort food? Yeah.
Kale and spinach.
Oh, kale! I share that passion.
And shake.
And lastly, someone or something that keeps you inspired or your spirits high.
So I said, I live next to San Francisco Bay, and one of the things that keeps me inspired is that back in 1960, they planned to fill in half of San Francisco Bay to enlarge the San Francisco airport. And a group of environmentalists got together and stopped the airport expansion and founded an organization called Save the Bay that still exists. And they set in motion work that has changed the environment in San Francisco and made it not just livable for people, but made it reclaimed habitat for wildlife and made it probably the most attractive urban area in the United States. And, I'm continually inspired by the vision of those people 60 years ago and the work that they did, not for themselves, but for future generations. And, it wasn't a big group. People thought they were kooky, but they did it. And, I'm the beneficiary of that. And, there's a couple of signs on San Francisco Bay in honor of them and the work they did. But, we largely appreciate them without knowledge. And so I find it very inspiring to look around. I'm about, I don't know, quarter of a mile from the bay. It's all around us. In fact, that we have a clean bay and that all kinds of birds have come back. The other day I saw 2 bald eagles fly over San Francisco Bay, and I grew up here. And so 40 years ago, the idea of seeing a bald eagle anywhere in California was laughable. Yeah. That we can see them today and it's not remarkable and no one even looks up is incredible.
Yeah, how nature regenerates fast. Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having you here. Your story is really fascinating. For whoever wants to know more about his work, you can find a profile on our website and also links to his own website. We can share on the chat. Manu, if you could do that, please, since you're hands-on. And yeah, we're going to take a little break. And
I think we should jump right into Caju so that we don't delay everyone else that's here.
Okay, I just need to get a charger.
I can start doing the intro while you get the charger. So yeah, I just
It's
put
okay.
Steve's
Yeah,
profile here on
yeah,
the chat. Feel free to explore, take a look at his work. It's really, really beautiful. Some of the pieces look almost like modern, modern art in different ways. And then you look closer and you see it's actually a photograph. So the abstractions are
yeah.
really, really special. I've been looking at a few for myself. I need to spruce up the house during this.
Oh,
These
and also something important that we did not mention, Steve, Kaju, and Jordan already participating on our COVID-19 relief campaign. So a part of the process for the sale of their works is going to be donated to the World Health Organization. So please, there is even a bigger reason for you guys to buy something. And yeah, so Manu, you can jump right in with Kaju.
Perfect. So next we have Kalina Juzbiak. I hope I pronounced it right. I tried my best.
Yeah.
Kalina is a creative and artistic entrepreneur. She lives from her art with a systemic view, uniting discipline and determination to a proactive imagination. And I love the text on this. It's like the rhymes and everything. She is constantly developing her abilities to transform compositions and situations into provocative moments of reflection of those that observe them. She uses art as a tool to enhance consciousness and perception of reality, actively inspiring the change of her context. Welcome to our interview series, Kalina, and thank you for making the time to share a bit of your story with us.
Thank you. I share Steve's vision. It's weird to like listen to someone actually reading your bio out. It's a little funny, but yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited.
Fantastic. Hid, you want
we're
to just
excited to have you here.
jump right in with the questions?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go for it.
absolutely. So Kaju, kind of same format of the previous interview with slight changes, but we want to see how each artist like see the world differently, you know. So we would like to know how you're doing and where are you spending your quarantine days?
I have to say I have my days that I'm super up and the days that I feel a little more emotional, tired. I think there's like a world vibration going on, and I feel a lot of people actually share this. So I'm allowing myself to feel tired a few days and also to feel creative on other days. Right now I'm located in Brazil. I'm actually close on the coast of Brazil. I managed to come here, like arrive kind of last minute before borders closed and everything. So I'm actually feeling pretty lucky. I can show you my view right now to be close to nature. So yeah, I think I'm pretty lucky that I can be, yeah, close to
Yeah.
nature and to my family. So I'm here with my parents and my youngest sister too.
No, absolutely. And I think we all who have the opportunity to be closer to nature, or like even the ones who don't, we're like looking at nature with different eyes. So for those who don't know your work, can you describe a little bit of like who you are as an artist, like and like your work?
Yeah, I think my art is actually very flexible. There's an identity to it. I work with a lot of details and almost a surrealistic construction and composition, but I work really on the most varied surfaces. I go from a piece of paper to a wall, and I really love like doing a lot of big things. So I work directly on walls with no um, like how can I say, with no project. So I just go and I love an empty space where I can create. So yeah, I go from illustrations on paper to canvases to walls to patterns. I work with brands too. I've painted cars, 2 cars already during events, live events.
No
So
way.
it's
Yeah.
really yeah. So it's really I like the flexibility and the
Multimedia. Yeah.
dynamics, yeah, and the dynamic of actually the art. It can be applied to different things, and I like the challenge of actually trying new things out.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe a little bit of your daily practice as an artist and how that has changed now during this pandemic?
Well, I always say that I have a routine, but I don't really have a routine because my days can be very different from each other. I work from home or from right now I'm actually kind of in between places, so I don't really have a physical studio. But I go a lot to places to paint on people's walls, on businesses and things like that, or I create things at my home or studio, wherever I am.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really dynamic, but at the same time, I'm very disciplined. So I always look for like keeping a balance in my routine of like eating well, doing exercise, and then some time to create and always a time to get inspiration somehow. So that involves reading or watching a movie or even like having a run in nature. So this balance is always very important for me in my practice. And I
Mm-hmm.
have been working, I've decided to actually work or like live from my art, as I say, 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, and I've been
Yeah.
fully committed to that. So I've done a few jobs, like side jobs sometimes, but like that's my main thing for 6 years now.
Well, congratulations. We know this is not an easy choice. It's like our paths as entrepreneurs. You're a creative entrepreneur. There are a lot of ups and downs, but it's really important to follow your gut feeling and live the dream, like in a way.
Yeah,
Even like when
yeah,
like there are good and bad parts about it, but like I think it's a very courageous act. So
yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about your background and your path when becoming an artist? You decided to become a full-time artist 6 years ago, but like what made you change and what you used to do before?
Well, I was always a creative person. I mean, since a child, I was always drawn to that somehow. When I had to choose like something to study, I actually studied architecture. So I graduated in architecture. I worked with that for a few years during university, and then when I graduated, also I had my own studio. And then I just like heard a calling almost, and I said, look, like art is really my passion. I was drawing a lot at that time, and I started getting like some clients and people like, don't you want to do a mural in my house or in my company? So I started moving in that direction, and I saw that even when I had my architectural studio and my like side hobby thing kind of raising interest, I was happier to go paint a wall than actually like going to my own architecture studio. So I was like, okay, something's wrong in this
Yeah,
equation here. So I started like really following my heart and dream, and it was like a very intuitive process. Of course, there's like ups and downs, and also like kind of emotional crisis involved in that. But that's the process, I think, of when you actually work with your art. It is an expression. It is a view, a point of view of the world, and how we like translate it somehow. It can be in whatever way of expression we have. But I think that's a thing that all artists share. So it was like a process of getting to know myself also, and like this
hmm,
almost also building, like taking out all these armors and like really allowing myself to show the world who I am. Because I say like when I paint or whatever I do, I always leave a little piece of me behind. So it's almost like, I always say, it's almost for an artist like to walk naked on an avenue, because you're like totally exposed to the world. So it was like a decision, emotional decision in that sense. And I've been in the process, I also studied design, graphic designs, just to have some other tools in my hand to work on. And I've been like studying different things, but I never actually studied art. It was just like really a passion that I was started studying and developing on my own.
yeah. Well, congrats. Your work is also very, very, very beautiful. And you mentioned that sometimes during like your daily practice, you like to watch movies, read. Where do you find inspiration usually? And what would you say is a big source of inspiration for your work?
It's funny because a lot of people ask me that, like, who is the artist that you you're inspired in. And actually, I don't, for a long time, I never searched for inspiration on other artists, like in the same medias that I did, that I work on. I always search for inspiration in like totally different things. Like I like reading about quantum physics to like neuroscience to psychology to photography to design to fashion. And I keep doing that because I think the more uh, like the wider our spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
studies is, the more like new
Yeah.
connections you can make. So I kind of had this vision since I was a child. I loved like reading the encyclopedia at the time. We didn't have like Google. Um, just like to read different
We had
things that just like
encyclopedias at
exactly.
home as well. Yeah.
So yeah, like Barca in the
Yeah.
encyclopedia, I used to like open it up in like a random page and read about something random. So I think till today I kind of go that way. I really like reading about and watching totally different things because I think it kind of opens my mind to other worlds, and that's where like I have the insight. So yeah, till
Mm-hmm.
today you could see me reading a book art, but you could also see me reading like a totally like
Anything else?
neuroscience, quantum physics book or whatever.
Amazing. So we first started talking because of your project Painting with Artists, which is also a part of the Alpha platform now. So I'd love if you could describe this project a little bit more and how your collaboration with Alpha has been so far. It's still the very beginning, but we see a lot of synergy like in our work, like and our goals. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the last year I have been like driven a lot to using the art really as a tool to enhance people's perceptions and to really like bring the awareness to certain subjects. So I really think as an artist we have this tool in our hands. So I kind of felt drawn to that, and the past year I've been working on this idea of like this next steps is really to create movements that have an impact. So yeah, I was like already actually quarantining here when I got here. And I saw this movement of a lot of moms actually with kids having to stay at home. And they were like, I don't know what else to create with my kids. I have to entertain them. And parents have to be creative. Kids have to kind of also be creative. And we all, like, creativity is right now a really important tool in our daily lives, like being in this social distancing times. So anyway, I started
Mm-hmm.
connecting all these ideas, and I came up with this, idealized this project called Painting with Artists. Um, and the idea behind it is to like give the artist a motivation and a purpose to create. So artists from around the world are sharing illustrations to be colored. And people like from all ages, from kids to parents, that could provide these illustrations to the kids, or adults can take this time to actually put into their routines a bit of a more creative moment. So it started with this idea. We created an Instagram account to do that. And it has like, the project is only 2 weeks old, but it's growing fast. And there's a lot of artists from around the world really sharing illustrations, and people printing it or painting it at home on iPads or cell phones or whatever. So yeah, it is a project really to kind of bring more creativity to our lives, and this moment of mindfulness almost, because I think as artists, as Steve also was saying, when he's in nature, like he's in nature, need to like, when I'm creating, and I'm present and I'm there and I give myself into that. So we've been hearing a lot of feedback of people that are like suffering a bit from anxiety and everything, and they're
Yeah.
actually taking this time in the day that they like paint one illustration per day, and it's like their meditation time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so rare nowadays to have those moments when you're fully present and like not trying to multitask, which is actually like a big misconception. You know, I think like our mind it's capable to switch from task to task quickly, but like you can only be like fully present like with one thing. So like really like focusing your attention to that task that are developing when you're painting, like, and really like immersing yourself it's almost like meditation, like, and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
see not only kids but like also adults doing that.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And
So
even for the
Kaju,
artists, I mean, they've been also reporting like that they have now like a purpose to create. So because a lot of them are commission based, and now that they might not have so
yeah,
many commissions. So yeah, that was like how we actually connected and approached, because I started also seeing with Alpha a lot of common things in that sense of like using arts for to create this awareness. So I'm sure we're gonna create a lot of other things together.
absolutely. It's just the beginning of a very long collaboration, hopefully. So now jumping to the quick answer questions. Can you tell us about a book you're reading or that you've read recently, which has been inspiring?
I'm actually reading an interesting book now. It's called The Beauty of Everyday Things. It's by a Japanese philosopher, and I think it's very appropriate actually to the timing. It's really about seeing beauty in the details and not looking for something bigger and beyond of where we are. So he actually talks about a lot of Japanese design of like the functionality versus beauty of everything that they design.
Yeah.
But in a sense, I think it applies to us here, like everyone in their home, like find the beauty, find the inspiration in the small things, in the little details in your home, in the little details or connections that you can do with people around you, or just like by looking out of the window. So I really believe that it's a time for us to kind of enjoy the stillness and the quietness and to find beauty in the little things.
Amazing. Couldn't agree more. Now, like a movie or series that you would recommend?
Right now,
You
like
can
one
pass
that,
too. Like if you're like,
yeah.
"Ah,
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
I'm
into
watching.
TV."
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't watch that much TV. We're actually doing kind of night movie nights, but I can't like really remember one name right now. But I'm happy
Okay.
to share more about it in another time.
You can always share in the chat after.
Yeah.
Something you've been a comfort food that you've been eating a lot lately.
I have to share the kill. You know, I love a green juice, and I'm really like actually taking this time to take even more care. I'm plant-based, so I'm actually really into plants, really at the moment.
Yes. You see, it seems that KO is the secret source.
Yeah.
And lastly, something or someone who makes you feel inspired or that helps you keeping your spirit high.
I think it's nature mainly. I'm really driven by nature since I'm a kid. I grew up close to the ocean or on the countryside. So I feel pretty lucky and grateful to be here and to just like feel the sun on my skin. As you can see, I'm like vitamin D right now
Yeah.
here. So this is really important for me in general, but mainly at this point also it's what keeps me grounded right now.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's always a pleasure talking to you and learning more about your work. And please, for those who are not familiar with her work, you can check Alpha's platform and check a little bit more about what she's doing, like our collaboration with painting with artists. And also, there's a link to her own website. So thank you, Kaju. And
Yeah,
now
and
we are gonna
if I could
continue
just
with
add
our.
one more thing, Kaju, would you be interested in connecting with some other alpha artists for painting with artists? Because if so, we can also, share your
Facilitate.
contact information afterwards.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, the more the merrier. I think it's good for everyone. And if we join forces and really collaborate at this point, I think it's very important. So whoever wants to have questions or whatever, you can please share my contact. I'll be happy to be connected to everyone that's interested.
Perfect. So reach out to us and we will send you Kaju's information.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you for
here.
having me.
On to the last one.
Thank you. So thank you for bearing with us. Now is the last interview. Well, very no, it has been fantastic so far. And the last artist is Jordan Holmes. Jordan is an artist and a scholar who works primarily in painting and sculpture. Her work has been shown internationally in the US, UK, Canada, and it's seen in a lot of private collections. She's the recipient of San Francisco Art Institute 2016 to 19 Grand Fellowship Award, as well as the 2020 Artist Grant at the Vermont Studio Center. So welcome, Jordan, and thank you so much for being here with us today. We're grateful to be sharing a bit of your story as well.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about how you're doing during the pandemic, like where you're spending your quarantine?
Yeah, I think like similar to the other artists, it's kind of, been a bit of an emotional pendulum. I swing from feeling very, excited and positive some days about the possibilities, and then other days I feel kind of incredibly tired and unmotivated, but I'm grateful to still be working from home for both my day jobs and also working out of a home studio at the same time. So the boundaries between my day jobs and studio and relaxation and personal time have kind of become very blurry, but I'm starting to figure out a new routine, a new normal, and I'm really just trying to enjoy the extra studio time. I'm not really making more work than I usually would. My friend Kathy Sirico, who's an amazing artist based out of Brooklyn. I was speaking to her the other day, and she kind of put it perfectly when she said she's just trying to enjoy making more rather than putting more pressure on herself to like create the next great work of art under quarantine. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of new information, so I think time is the only way to really digest what is going on. And so can you share with us, for those who don't know your work, a little bit about who you are as an artist and like your practice?
Yeah, sure. So I work in between painting. I'm formally trained as a painter, but I work in between painting and sculpture, and I also do some textile work. My work typically tends to grapple with our kind of fraught relationship to the built environment. So I'm really interested in how space is materialized, how it's organized, how it's made to mean, how space produces meaning. I think a lot about the like coded distinctions between space and place, and like how to unsettle the presumed divisions between public and private space. So yeah, I really think about my work as like a way to arrive at a more nuanced definition of space. I've long been collecting imagery relating to domestic spaces and urban architecture and the built environment, and I pull these off of the internet, but also document things that I encounter in my day-to-day movements. And fluorescent colors are pretty prominent in a lot of my work, and I'm interested in them because they're like these highly instructional colors, right? When we encounter neon or fluorescence in the built environment, they're typically dictating how bodies have to navigate through a certain space. They prohibit and beckon us into certain spaces. They keep us in our lane. They tell us where to enter and where to exit. So they're these incredibly authoritative colors, both formally and politically, I think. And so there's a lot of visual and aesthetic and even political richness there for me.
Fantastic. You mentioned briefly that you also have a day job. So can you tell us like a bit of your background and with your artist practice as an artist and the other?
Sorry, do you mind just
You froze up? Yeah.
You just cut out a little bit there for a second.
I'm so sorry, it's Brazilian internet.
That's okay.
I said that you mentioned briefly that you also have a day job. So I would like to learn a little bit more about your background and what led you into becoming an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I was born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. I did my BFA in critical and cultural practices at Emily Carr University, which is one of the larger art schools on the West Coast in Canada. And then after that, I kind of immediately jumped into applying for grad school. So I didn't take too much time in between. And I got offered a spot at the San Francisco Art Institute, where I did both MFA and an MA at the same time. So it was a 3-year program. And I just finished that in the spring. So I've been in San Francisco now for a little over 3 years. And I'm currently working at a museum in Napa called DeRosa, as well as a gallery in San Francisco called Caddist. So I work 6 days a week, or was up until recently working 6 days a week, and then kind of trying to puzzle piece my studio time in between all that work. You know, a lot of the studio time was occurring on the weekends and kind of, you know, when I would get home from work. I also recently spent a month in residency at the Vermont Studio Center, and I would like to say that that's kind of like ideally my studio schedule. Ideally, I would love to kind of transition into working full time as an artist and treat it like a 9-to-5 day job, because I'm kind of actually a better middle of the day painter. I'm not very productive in the early morning or late at night. So I've always kind of said, like, when it comes to painting, I'm a sprinter more than a marathoner. So I like to kind of work in short bursts throughout the day or across multiple days or weeks, which isn't really conducive to having 2 day jobs. So I've kind of been trying to embrace this time, being able to work at home for my day jobs, to also do studio all in between. So it's kind of all just sort of happening all at once, which has been an interesting sort of experiment, I guess.
Yeah. So in a way, this pandemic has helped, I would say.
I guess.
Or like how did it transform your?
Yeah, it's kind of weirdly conducive to my process, I guess, just being that, like, a kind of more of a sprint worker. And it's also, I think, too, like, helped me to learn that like, to consider things outside of actual production as a part of my process. I think, like, in the past, and I think a lot of artists can relate to this, I've been really tough on myself, especially when I was in grad school, when the competition is so heavy, for not working these, like, extreme long hours or as frequently in the studio as my colleagues. And I've come to realize that, like, a part of what I do requires me to just stew on images and forms and textures and colors for a while I can kind of compose them into something that I want to make. And sometimes that actually takes, you know, months, whether I realize it or not. That's also, like, a really productive and really crucial part of my studio practice.
Got it. So can you talk a little bit about a standout piece or a series of pieces that you have created or that are still planning to create, which would be meaningful for your work as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one standout piece that comes to mind, and it's actually, it's quite an old piece from 2017, and it's not a particularly good painting either. And it doesn't look much like what I do now, but when you brought up that question, it's the first thing that comes to my mind, so I'm just gonna go with that. It's important to me because everything I've made sense has built on or been compounded upon this piece, and I've actually, especially some of the pieces that we're doing prints of for this COVID-19 relief initiative are all kind of based off of this other work that I'm going to talk about. And I wouldn't have been able to make those if I hadn't first made this much earlier work. So.
Sorry to interrupt. Is it on your site? If we had a visual of it, it would be nice. But otherwise, we can
on my
share
website.
It after.
Yeah, it's not on Alpha's site, unfortunately, but it's on my personal website. It's, let's see, keep going down. It's this this gray one right above the yellow one. The one right above it. Yeah, that one.
This one?
Oh, no, the one below it. Yeah, that one. Yeah, so this piece I made, and I've just been thinking about it a lot because transition, like the ideas of transition and relocation kind of seem really relevant right now in our current situation. And they've also been often occurring themes in my own work, especially when I was in grad school. I had to move houses a few times in a really short period of time. And actually, during the summer of 2017, our entire graduate cohort had to relocate to a new campus right in the middle of the program. So it was kind of a turbulent time and a stressful situation. Moving your studio can be a very kind of anxiety-inducing sort of situation, as well as moving to a new home. So moving house and studio all at the same time, kind of it all was sort of collapsing in on one another. And because of that, I was thinking a lot about how spaces become occupied and vacated. So I started taking a lot of photos of like discarded piles of objects people had left on the streets in San Francisco, and made paintings based off of those. And this work is actually based off a photo of all the stuff that was in my studio in the dog patch in San Francisco, sitting out on the sidewalk when we had to relocate to the new campus. So I just kind of snapped like a quick photo of all the things from my studio piled on top of one another on the street while I was waiting for my partner to pull the moving van around. And I was just kind of very in awe of this like material index of everything I'd been working on up until that point, all kind of accumulated in one site. And yeah, like I said, it was like a very spatially disorienting time for me, which got me thinking a lot about, I was really starting to able to crystallize ideas about how objects produce spatial relations. So like I said, this isn't really how I paint anymore. It's not a particularly good painting, but it's a really important one for me. And it really helped me to start learning how to emphasize the formal properties of space and then translate those properties into compositional elements for a painting. And in that, I kind of learned that I'm more interested or concerned with intimating or suggesting space rather than directly quoting space. So, at that point, I think it was translation as a formal strategy became really key for me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Very interesting. And what about looking forward? How do you see your work developing? And if you could also add a little bit, how would you imagine like a potential collaboration with us as well? Yeah, it's just the beginning, but
yeah.
I think we can do a lot together. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And like I mentioned, I would ultimately like to transition into working as a full-time artist. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working towards it. And I think I mentioned that I recently got back from a month-long residency at the Vermont Studio Center, which was so transformative. And I'm already looking forward to doing more residencies. I think I work really well with a deadline just because I have been in school for so long. I did art school for like 7 years in a row. So I think that kind of like highly rigorous environment where you're essentially being hothoused, and you only have access to the space and the resources for a limited amount of time is like weirdly productive for me. So I hope to be able to do more residencies in the future, perhaps on other continents once hopefully the borders reopen. I'd also like to continue exhibiting regularly with my gallery in San Francisco. They're called Marrow Gallery. And I do have an upcoming solo exhibition with them. Unfortunately, it was postponed. It was supposed to be in early May, but due to the pandemic, it's been postponed. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, for late summer or maybe in the fall. And aside from that, I'd also like to have a museum exhibition within the next 3 years, but it's a little difficult actually to envision like a
Jordan, I think we lost her.
No, I
think we lost you for a minute. I think we lost you for
me?
a minute.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm back? Where did you cut out at?
I heard everything, but like maybe go back to the you would like to have a museum exhibition.
Yeah, I would like to, that was kind of one of my rough goals, but I'm just recently thinking that it is a little difficult to envision a future for, I think, for a lot of artists for their practice right now, not only because things are so uncertain, but just I think it's also really going to shift kind of the landscape of how artists work because of the pandemic. So, and we're already seeing that happening, and a lot of things like this case in point, you know, moving online more and more. So, but that said, I think that working with Alpha will, I hope will allow me to ultimately be kind of less precious about my work and take more risks and become more experimental, and you know, it also maybe be more hopeful that even if I produce something that, I work large scale a lot, so knowing that even if I produce something that might not see the light of day in its original form, I still have the opportunity to circulate it online through Alpha's platforms. That's really exciting.
And as a print. And I think for those who don't know our work too well, one of the main objectives is really helping artists to bridge like that like stage on their careers when they're having to have a side job and work on their creative practice on their spare time to become a full-time artist and connections with the different audiences around the world. We're currently operational in South America, North America, Europe, and soon South Africa. So hopefully like you're gonna get to enchant a lot of other people like in those continents too. And we are hoping that we can facilitate that happening as soon as possible, even with the borders closed. So we're getting close to the end of our time here, and I would love to know now the quick answer questions. What is a book that you've read recently which inspired you?
Well, I'm doing a lot of rereading of things that are already on my shelf. So one book would be How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell is one of my favorites, and it's kind of like an argument against productivity culture, which I think is very kind of I don't know, relevant for this time, because I've had like a lot of difficulty with this surge in like productivity culture rhetoric since the pandemic. And like, I think we've all kind of seen these posts on Instagram telling us like this is the perfect time to like write a book or start a business or get super in shape. Or like I've seen other posts being like, well, Shakespeare wrote King Lear while he was under quarantine, and that may be true, and I think it's great in theory to like aspire to that level of achievement, but I also think that productivity culture can be harmful because it makes me sometimes feel like my body and my time are not my own. So this book is really kind of an argument against productivity culture, and it's super interesting. But I also read a lot of fiction, and a good friend of mine recently published a book called The Last True Poets of the Sea. Her name's Julia Drake, and it's an incredible, incredible book. So I've been kind of taking a look back at that as well since the first time I read it. So yeah.
Amazing. We're gonna check those out.
Yeah.
Now a movie or a series?
I'm kind of obsessed with reality TV, always have been. So if you haven't tried it, I would highly recommend Vanderpump Rules. It's my favorite show.
Okay.
They show for geniuses. It's amazing. It's just reality TV is great because it's like, it's just a way for me to decompress at the end of the day. Yeah, so check it out.
Amazing. A comfort food, which has been very comforting lately.
There's so many. Well, there's this little ramen shop a few blocks away from where I live in San Francisco, and it's still open and doing delivery and takeout service. So my partner and I try to order from there at least once a week because their ramen is incredible. So that's where I like to get takeout from a lot. But other than that, we've been doing like a lot of large batch dishes, like making large batches of chili and yellow curry. So that's kind of always very comforting.
Yeah, no, perfect. And lastly, what is something or someone who inspires you?
Well, I think because all of our physical worlds have gotten really small lately, and we're all kind of now just sort of having to keep to our neighborhoods. I'm trying to really appreciate my neighborhood a bit more, especially when I go for walks. I live in the Sunset District in San Francisco, and there's like a lot of great colors and textures, and the houses are all the row houses are like painted in these garish sort of like Pepto-Bismol pink and like canary yellow sort of colors, which is really, informs a lot of the work I do. So I'm trying to be, I think, hyper observant of those things. But aside from that, I think also just seeing how like studious and ambitious my colleagues and contemporaries have been online. I know a lot of artists who've lost shows or work or other opportunities due to the pandemic, including myself, but in spite of it all, everyone is still working and hustling, and that's really the most encouraging thing to see my network kind of still striving for the best. So yeah.
Absolutely. Art is going to save us all.
Hoping, right?
It's what is going to keep our spirits high. Yeah. Well, Jordan, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure talking with you. For those who want to check a little bit more about her work, her profile is also on the Alpha's platform, and you can find a link to her own website. And if you have any questions, we can always put you in touch with all of those amazing artists. And I think that's the end for today's interview series. Manu, would you like to say anything?
No, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all soon. There's a comment here from Craig. Hey, Craig, how are you doing? All three artists have been very generous in sharing their stories behind their works. Please share with us the preferred way to follow their works and show us going forward in an email to all of us. Thank you. Yeah, we'll share the recording. We'll trim it down into individual recordings as well, so that you can use this as a tool as well to get your work out there. And they're all on Alpha, so you can follow them on Alpha, check out their works. All of the works are benefiting a COVID-19 relief campaign. So thank you, and we'll see you all next week.
Just one more thing. Yes, we're going to be running those lunch interview series and different webinars now every Friday. We're going to be releasing a longer schedule, like for the coming interviews and webinars soon. But thank you so much. It has been a pleasure being with you all. Like, it's very meaningful for us to be able to share all of those stories. Like, we feel that we can contribute a little bit to what is going on, like, and hopefully inspire the audiences. And yeah, and so thank you. If you have any comments, please email us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.